If there is one love story in history that continues to both horrify and intrigue, it is surely the strange and unsettling relationship between the Roman Emperor Nero and the young man Sporus. Yet the central question remains, was this truly love, or merely a grotesque exercise of power by a ruler who held the fate of an empire in his hands? We are in the 1st century AD, a period when Rome descended into turmoil under the reign of Emperor Nero, one of the most controversial figures in history. He is remembered as a cruel tyrant, consumed by debauchery and excessive indulgence, and even rumored to have played the lyre while the city of Rome was engulfed in flames. Within this turbulent setting emerges Sporus, a young man with delicate features, expressive eyes, and a fragile beauty that strikingly resembled Empress Poppaea Sabina, Nero's deceased wife. This uncanny likeness sealed Sporus's fate. He became a shadow of the past, a substitute born of the emperor's dark obsession. To understand why this affair is considered one of the most disturbing episodes in Roman history, we must return to the early years of Nero's reign, a time when the empire stood at the height of its power, yet within lay a world of intrigue, violence, and desire. The relationship between Nero and Sporus was not merely a personal tragedy. It symbolized the moral decline of an entire civilization. Above all, it raises a profound question. Can absolute power distort love to such an extent that the boundary between genuine affection and ruthless possession disappears entirely? In the next section we will encounter the central figures of this narrative: Nero, the infamous emperor marked by madness, and Sporus, the innocent youth drawn into the vortex of power, in order to understand how such an extraordinary relationship first began. When people recall Nero, they often remember only a ruthless Roman emperor, the man believed to have killed his mother, his wife, and even to have orchestrated the destruction of Rome itself. Yet, to understand his relationship with Sporus, we must step back and consider Nero not merely as a tyrant, but as a profoundly complex human being, at once fragile and cruel, yearning for affection yet consumed by an obsession with absolute power. Nero was born in AD 37, the son of Gnaeus Domitius Ahenobarbus and Agrippina the Younger, an ambitious and calculating woman who was also the niece of Emperor Caligula. From childhood, Nero was immersed in an environment dominated by violence and political intrigue, where familial bonds were frequently sacrificed for survival. It was Agrippina who maneuvered her son onto the imperial throne through elaborate schemes, eliminating rivals and even marrying her own uncle Emperor Claudius, to secure Nero's succession. Under the heavy shadow of his mother's ambition, Nero grew into an adolescent who was both sensitive and insecure. He harbored a passion for the arts, music, theater, and poetry, pursuits considered incompatible with the stern image of a Roman ruler. This divergence made him both desperate for love and perpetually fearful of rejection. Meanwhile, Sporus emerges in the historical record as a youth of extraordinary beauty. Ancient sources describe him as possessing delicate features, a slender figure, sorrowful eyes, and a fragility reminiscent of a flower on the verge of withering. What set him apart most, however, was his striking resemblance to Poppaea Sabina and Nero's second wife. Poppaea Sabina had been an ambitious, intelligent, and captivating woman who conquered Nero through beauty, influence, and cunning, becoming the embodiment of a brief golden age in the empire. Yet her life ended tragically. After a heated quarrel, Nero, in a fit of rage, kicked her in the abdomen, killing both her and their unborn child. Her death left an immense void in the emperor's psyche and implanted within him a morbid obsession, the desire to recreate the image of his lost wife. Sporus, with his fragile appearance and uncanny resemblance to Poppaea, became the solution to that obsession. But rather than receiving genuine affection, he quickly descended into the role of an instrument for Nero's madness and unrestrained desires. Let us imagine an empire at the height of splendor, with blood-soaked arenas of the Colosseum, extravagant banquets awash in wine and music, gilded palaces and marble statues. Amidst this grandeur, Nero lived in a state of profound loneliness, and Sporus, an innocent young man, became the mirror of his emperor's destructive fixation. In the next section we will witness the fateful turning point, the moment when Nero transformed Sporus from an ordinary youth into his bizarre wife, through a ceremony that shocked the entire Roman world. Perhaps no reign in Roman history was marked by stranger rituals than that of Nero. Yet the pinnacle of this eccentricity was undoubtedly the moment when he transformed Sporus, a young man, into his bride. According to the historians Suetonius and Cassius Dio, Nero ordered Sporus to be castrated so that he would forever retain the delicate softness that resembled Poppaea Sabina. This act was both brutal and revealing. It embodied Nero's extreme possessiveness, for he did not merely wish Sporus to serve as a substitute but sought absolute control over his body and his destiny. Following this forced transformation, Nero staged a public wedding in Rome. The emperor donned the attire of a groom, while Sporus, dressed in a bridal gown and veiled like a Roman bride, was led before officials and citizens alike. The ceremony was conducted with the solemnity of a royal marriage, with one striking difference: the bride was not a woman. Picture the scene. Under the flickering torchlight, before a crowd torn between astonishment and horror, Nero kissed Sporus, placed a ring upon his hand, and addressed him as Augusta, a title reserved for an empress. The Romans of the time must have been deeply shocked, yet none dared speak out, for before them stood a despot who held the power of life and death over the empire. After the ceremony, Nero treated Sporus as his lawful wife. They appeared together at banquets and public celebrations, and on ceremonial occasions Sporus even rode beside the emperor in his chariot. Whispers spread. This was not love, but a grotesque performance staged to satisfy Nero's morbid obsession. Beneath the glittering facade, however, Sporus was nothing more than a victim stripped of choice. He bore both physical and psychological anguish, reduced to a living effigy of a woman long dead. The historical record preserves no words from Sporus himself, yet it is not difficult to imagine the depth of tragedy endured by a youth robbed of his body and forced into the role of emperor's wife, against his will. More importantly, this wedding revealed not only the perversity of Nero's mind but also a stark truth. Under absolute power, any person could be turned into an object of possession, regardless of morality, law, or human dignity. In the next section, we will witness how Roman society responded to this shocking event, from the nobility and the military to ordinary citizens, and how political schemes began to unfold behind the glitter of music, wine, and gold. After the bizarre wedding between Nero and Sporus, Rome was abuzz with whispers, though most were voiced only in the shadows. Ordinary citizens regarded it as madness, while the aristocracy remained silent, for opposition meant certain death. Nero's absolute power suppressed any open protest, yet dissatisfaction and contempt quietly spread throughout the empire. For many Romans, the ceremony was not merely a violation of moral order but also a sign of dynastic decline. Rome had long prided itself on traditional values, family, military discipline, and the stern virtues of the ancestors. Now, however, the emperor, who was expected to embody the moral fabric of the state, had turned marriage into a grotesque spectacle. The aristocracy, already resentful of Nero's autocracy, saw in this event the ultimate proof of corruption. At banquets they were forced to offer congratulations and praise, but privately they harbored deep resentment. From this climate of discontent, plots against Nero began to take shape. The deaths of his mother, his wife Octavia, and above all Poppaea Sabina had already branded him as inhuman. With Sporus he had not only destroyed a body but also annihilated the very boundary of morality. Even the Roman army, the backbone of imperial authority, began to waver in loyalty. Soldiers admired strength in a ruler, but it was difficult to respect an emperor who paraded through the streets with his bride, while the empire drifted into instability. Nero's weakness, decadence, and theatrical excess gradually eroded his standing among the legions. For the common people, burdened by heavy taxation, fires, and war, resentment deepened. To them, the image of Nero laughing beside his bride Sporus was an insult, proof that the man on the throne cared nothing for their suffering and indulged only in his own perverse entertainments. As for Sporus, though he bore the title of Augusta, he held no real power. His fate was tragic. Seated beside the emperor yet reduced to a puppet, he became the ultimate symbol of possession. A wife without love, a mere shadow conjured to replace the dead. These consequences accumulated, producing fractures within the empire. Factions quietly prepared, and opposition forces awaited their moment. Nero, meanwhile, remained trapped within his illusions, convinced that his devotion to Sporus was a testament to his invincible power. In reality, it was the very descent that would lead him toward ruin. In the next section, we will turn to the lessons and legacy left behind by this extraordinary relationship. A story that not only reflects the decay of a dynasty but also leaves profound reflections on love, power, and humanity for future generations. The story of Nero and Sporus, though steeped in perversity, leaves behind bitter lessons for posterity about power, love, and the decline of a civilization. First, it demonstrates how absolute power can transform a man into a monster. Nero was not only a murderer but also one who distorted the very concept of love, reducing it to a form of possession. For him, Sporus was never a human being with a soul and the right to choose. He was merely a shadow, a substitute to soothe the emperor's obsession. This stands as a vivid testament to the maxim that when one holds unlimited power, love itself mutates into cruelty. Second, this strange relationship highlights the suffering of individuals caught in the machinery of history. Sporus left no words of his own, yet his silence resounds powerfully. He became a symbol of those crushed by power, forced to live lives not their own. How many other Sporuses have existed throughout history? People reduced to instruments, stripped of their true identities. Third, the episode illustrates the decline of the Roman Empire. When rulers immersed themselves in grotesque amusements and moral principles were abandoned, the seeds of collapse were already sown. Indeed, history proved this true. Only a few years later, Nero lost his throne, fled in disgrace, and died in humiliation, while Sporus remained a possession passed between Nero's successors. In terms of legacy, the story of Nero and Sporus has left an enduring mark that continues to spark debate. Some historians regard it as evidence of Nero's depravity and decadence. Others, adopting a more humanistic perspective, see Sporus as a tragic witness to love warped under the hand of power. Today, whenever Nero and Sporus are mentioned, people do not merely recall a grotesque love story. They also confront fundamental questions. What is true love? Can love exist where one side holds only possession and the other lives in fear and despair? And perhaps most importantly, does this tale serve as a warning across all ages, that whenever love is placed beneath the iron heel of power, it inevitably becomes an instrument of destruction? In the next section, we will close this tragic journey with an open ending, one that not only recounts the downfall of Nero and the fate of Sporus but also raises a haunting question. Is this truly the whole story, or do shadows of untold secrets still remain?